And Flávio Bolsonaro, now he really showed himself to be a statesman. Even though he's not the president, just a senator, he went there to try to fix the mess created by the PT government. That's absurd.
Because I don't know where you live, Congressman. Either you live in a fantasy world or you and the far-right gentlemen are attached to fake news. Eduardo Bolsonaro met with US officials to ask for higher tariffs on Brazil. And more than that, he said, look, many times diplomacy is not the best way. Maybe the United States should send fighter jets to guarantee freedom in Brazil. What is this that you defended? Not only that. Tariffs that will hurt business owners, hurt workers, as well as a US military intervention in Brazil. But look, of course, you left Brazil with 33 million families, with half the population experiencing some level of food insecurity, with deep impoverishment. While Lula took Brazil off the hunger map, you know? Yeah, your leader Bolsonaro is in jail because there was even a plan to kill the president of the republic. What is that? That's unacceptable. To kill a Supreme Court justice. So what's at stake isn't about who's on the left or who's on the right, and I am a left-wing congresswoman. I believe the left defends Brazilian workers, but the real question is, what kind of country do we want? Do we want a country that defends a negotiable democracy, sovereignty, and workers, or one that wants to be a puppet of the United States, as shown in the project led by Flávio Bolsonaro and the imprisoned Bolsonaro?
The PT created the perfect scenario, the perfect storm for the tariffs to be applied. It's on record that Lula several times said he wouldn't reach out to President Trump, said he wouldn't seek out President Trump. He just boasted. Flávio went there to try to solve it, and now chaos has set in. Today, it's clear and obvious, Juliana, the PT, the tariffs for the Brazilian people.
The PT first. I just want to remind the congressman, with all due respect, that Bolsonaro won't be president in 2027 because he's in prison. He was convicted, I don't know if you remember, for attempting a coup d'etat, for leading a criminal organization. He is under house arrest for now. Let's see if that will continue, since he keeps breaking the law all the time, as is typical of the Bolsonaro family. Secondly, I also wanted to say that his son will not be president either. Polls show that Flávio Bolsonaro's situation is literally going downhill. The latest polls showed that President Lula leads with 45 points against Flávio Bolsonaro's 37 percentage points. There is no possible scenario for the Bolsonaro family to regain power because people know what's important to them, you know? The domestic worker who takes a 2-hour bus ride and comes back home, the supermarket cashier who works an exhausting 6-day shift, they know what they want is a president who takes Brazil off the hunger map. She knows she wants to have a president who is leading alongside the left-wing caucuses in the National Congress. The end of the 6-day shift. By the way, the far right is systematically trying to delay the progress toward ending the 6-day shift. I wanted you to talk to Davi Alcolumbre so he can move it forward, including in the federal Senate. The far right, together with part of the Centro, which often allies with you. What the Brazilian people know is that they want a country that guarantees income tax exemption for those who earn up to 5,000 reais. I'm talking about nurses, about teachers. I'm a teacher who works on the front lines of public schools. So this is the kind of country project where, along with all of this, democracy is negotiable, sovereignty is negotiable. And look at what Flávio Bolsonaro is doing. After he realized that the systematic attempt to attack democracy, to attack Brazilian sovereignty, was having an electoral impact. Because I don't know where you live, Congressman. Either you live in a fantasy world, or you and the far-right gentlemen are attached to fake news. Eduardo Bolsonaro met with US officials to ask for tariffs, for an increase in tariffs against Brazil, and more. He said that, look, many times diplomacy is not the best way. Maybe the United States should send fighter jets to guarantee freedom in Brazil. What exactly was it that you defended? Not only tariffs that will hurt business owners and workers, but also a US military intervention in Brazil. What the Brazilian people know is that they want a country that guarantees income tax exemption for those who earn up to 5,000 reais. I'm talking about nurses, about teachers. I'm a teacher who teaches in public school classrooms. So this is the vision for the country where, along with all of this, democracy is negotiable, sovereignty is negotiable.
Look, the blame will clearly fall on the one responsible for the huge tariff increase, which is the current president. And I heard here, trying to understand, it was a bit confusing. Here, for me, what Deputy Talíria Petrone was defending was a real mishmash, as is usually the case with members of the left especially. But it's not surprising coming from the party that defends abortion, the party that supports the legalization of drugs, the party that defends criminals, the party that even wanted, in fact, you made a law so that robbery would no longer be a crime. Yes, it's your child. So you tell a family man whose cell phone gets stolen and you don't want the robber to be punished anymore? These are the things you defend, and you want to talk about the hunger map, about taking people out. You should leave those beautiful beaches that Rio de Janeiro has. You should take your president out of the comfort of the palaces in Brasilia and come see the real Brazil, the Brazil of candidates from San Francisco, the Brazil of Carreira, from the towns, from the villages of Simão, Simundias, from places with dirt roads. Those aren't the places I go to. Those are the places I've seen. My voters are in those places. My voter is the Uber driver who is overwhelmed with taxes when he goes to buy his basic groceries. He's the iFood delivery guy. He's the owner of a small barbershop who is crushed by the state bureaucracy of your government. My voter is in the villages, in places with dirt roads, and this voter is still hungry. And you have been in power for years and decades, and the PT has been enslaving our Northeastern people, and you keep our Northeastern people in slavery because that's what you want. You see our people miserable, poor, just to serve as your vote bank. Unlike you, Talíria, your voter is a pot smoker, a spoiled rich kid who studies at Rio de Janeiro State University. My voter is the hardworking Brazilian from the Northeast, and I know them. You don't know them. Your president doesn't know them anymore either. And you all should come and get to know the real Brazil. Come and see our Northeast. And there in Rio Grande do Norte, where billions were spent on a water diversion project, and it's still without water. Because the water never reached the people. But Odebrecht's coffers were filled with corruption money from the San Francisco River Water Transfer Project to finance PT's campaigns, to finance this gang's campaigns. So if you want it so much, you will go. Our people, especially my people from the Northeast, who suffer from hunger, who suffer a lot and are enslaved by this elite, tell your president's crew to stop stealing, stop running up government deficits, stop stealing from the most vulnerable elderly Social Security recipients. Do you want me to take you, Talíria Petrone, to a mud house here in Sergipe where we had an elderly person cheated out of Social Security, where Lula's brother is deeply involved in this scandal? I'll show you the real Brazil, which is different from the pro-abortion, pot-smoking fantasy that your people defend. I know the hardworking Northeasterner who wakes up before sunrise and goes to bed at 2, 3, 4 in the morning. I understand what it's like for someone who wakes up early to milk cows and support their family. He is swallowed up by the dairy monopoly because of the heavy state regulation that you defend. And he has to sell a liter of milk for next to nothing to support his family. So that's what you stand for. Come and see the real Brazil, and I'm sure you'll change your view of the world.
First, the ones who tried to attack the Constitution were those who attempted a coup d'etat in a country that has already lived through at least one dictatorship. And fortunately, we had some of the most important trials in Brazilian democratic history, which led to the imprisonment of several military officers who ended up as defendants, were convicted and jailed. And also the imprisonment of Jair Bolsonaro, unfortunately the former president of Brazil, who was jailed, let us remember, for attempting a coup d'etat. The Constitution does not allow for a coup. Anyone who is democratic does not see a coup as a possible path, you know? It's for leading a criminal organization that wanted to kill the president and carry out a coup d'etat in the country. He is in prison for that. Sorry, Congressman, you should know the law. He is in prison, he can't use the speaker. He is in prison, convicted and imprisoned. And he may not be the brightest politician out there. We know he's not that bright. But he is also an experienced man who knows that while in prison, he shouldn't communicate with the Brazilian public. He shouldn't use social media. And when he writes a letter to the Brazilian people and gives it to his son to present to the Brazilian public, for God's sake, we know very well what he wants with that. Even while in prison, he wants to interfere in the direction Brazil's election takes. Faced with corruption and disunity among the Brazilian far right, he wants to try to save his son. What an excuse. Flávio Bolsonaro is in hot water and he's losing more and more popular support. And when you look at the letter to Brazilians that says Flávio Bolsonaro is going to save Brazil from corruption, violence, and poverty, I just don't buy it. Bolsonaro left Brazil with 33 million hungry people. Rodrigo Bacella from the Liberal Party, arrested for his alliance with the Red Command, money laundering with the Red Command. Flávio Bolsonaro, who is not a militia member, is going to talk about violence and corruption. I want to know how he managed to get 6 million to buy a house with cash. The senator wants to talk about corruption. Let's talk about the 161 million in budget amendments. Yeah, I don't know where they went. Yeah, coordinated by the president of the Liberal Party. I know that we are heading in the right direction, and the polls show that we are going to give President Lula another term to continue rebuilding Brazil, which was destroyed in the last administration, alongside the Brazilian people.